Welcome to the channel of PACIFIC414. Show us this loyalty. Throw yourself onto the subscribe button and submit yourself to the live streams, gaming streams, and so much more. Pathetic earthlings, I command you. Welcome to the channel of PACIFIC414. Show us this loyalty. Throw yourself onto the subscribe button and submit yourself to the live streams, gaming streams, and so much more. Pathetic earthlings, I command you.
Warning, due to adult language and humor, the following content may not be suitable for any viewers under the age of 18. Viewer discretion is strongly advised. The views and opinions expressed during the following live stream or video content are those of the individual and may not reflect those of others. Thank you. Good evening and welcome one and all to PACIFIC414 Pop Talk episode review. This episode review is for The Last of Us Season 1, Episode 8, When We Are in Need. When We Are in Need takes place directly after last week's episode, Left Behind, and in this week's episode, we meet this character right here. Let me just go ahead and share my screen. And we meet David, a teacher turned pastor who is reading from the Bible, and he's reading some scripture to a girl named Hannah who lost her father. Hannah is grieving the loss of her father, and she is crying, and David tells her there's no need to cry. God will lift your tears. Neither will they be pain anymore. As he quotes some scriptures from the Bible. And after that scene, we then get to another scene where we come to find out that these folks that are staying at this resort where they've hunkered down due to the harsh winter, they are running out of food and supplies. So David says, fine, well, gather up some men and we'll go hunting and see if we can find any wildlife and bring back some food. And then the episode cuts to Ellie and Joel. Ellie is still taking care of Joel, who's still trying to recover from his stab wound. And she has very little food left herself. She is trying to ration out her food when she gets the bright idea to grab Joel's gun and go look for some wildlife herself. And of course, Joel also needs some penicillin and some other medicine to fight off any infection. So Ellie goes out with Joel's hunting rifle. She spots a deer. She goes chasing after it and trips. And then she manages to get to a clearing where she is able to shoot off the deer. The deer gets hit by the bullet and runs away. Then what ends up happening is Ellie ends up following the trail of blood that leads her directly to the now deer corpse. Meanwhile, what Ellie doesn't know is that David is on his way to that very same spot. And David is accompanied by James. So what ends up happening is you have an encounter between James, David, and Ellie. And Ellie negotiates with James and David, asking for some medicine. And she specifically says she needs medicine to fight off an infection. David reluctantly agrees to the deal and sends James back to town to get the medicine that Ellie requires so that she can give Joel a shot of penicillin to fight off any infection after she sewed him up in the end of last week's episode. Of course, James is reluctant to do so, but David says, do it. He is the leader of this group, the leader of this town. And James goes to the town while David says it's going to be a while before James even returns. It's a 4-mile hike back to the town where we're at, where there's women, children, and we're all just trying to survive. So they end up going into this shack right here. And she said, and she, being Ellie, says, take the deer with us. So they're inside the shack and they're by a fire. And this is where David says, I'm aware of a man traveling with a little girl, and it's because of that man that one of my men didn't come back. I sent 4 men to the next town over to gather some supplies, and 3 of the 4 men came back, and my man was killed by a man traveling with a girl around your age. So as they're talking, little does Ellie know, James has returned and he has a gun pointed at her, and he basically is given the order by David to put down his gun, and Ellie is told, you're coming with us, whether you want to or not. So David ends up taking Ellie back to the town, and actually, no, wait. I'm getting a little ahead of myself. Sorry, I've got a little ahead of myself. David tells James to exchange the medicine that he brought back, and after Ellie leaves, she gets back to the house, and David tells James, we'll follow her trail in the morning. She couldn't have gone far. Ellie returns to the house where she and Joel are hiding out. She ends up putting the penicillin into Joel's wound. After asking Joel, where do I put it? And she goes, screw it. I'm just going to put it into the wound. And she ends up falling asleep right next to Joel. Meanwhile, we have a scene back at the resort where the cooks are cooking what's left of the rations. They specifically say that they only have 4 cans of broth left, and what they're serving up for tonight's meal is venison because that's the only meat they have left. Supposedly. It gets interesting, folks. but I'm not going to get to that point yet. But yes, as you can see, scrolling there at the bottom, there are spoilers. I just figured, you know what? I might as well rip off the Band-Aid and tell all the spoilers. So I'll keep that up there too. And we have a scene where James and David return with the deer, and he says, "We have some food." And of course, he also gives some information about Ellie and Joel's whereabouts, saying, "I'm going to take some men with me in the morning. We're going to follow her trail back to where she's staying, and we're going to get rid of them." And of course, Hannah, the girl who lost her father by the name of Alex, says, "Kill him." Well, David doesn't take too kind to that. He actually hits Hannah, knocking her to the ground, and then he picks her back up and says, "You think you don't have a father, but guess what? I'm your father now." And he tells her that they will get revenge for what happened to her father. So everybody's eating their meal. Of course, David, being the leader, ends up getting a larger portion than everyone else. And of course, you can tell that everybody in this town is starving just by how frantically they're eating what's on the plates, what's on the bowls, and all the clittering and clattering you hear in the background. So then we get to the next morning. Joel's awakened. She's not Joel, but Ellie's awakened, and she checks on Joel, checks his temperature, and he's still out. He's still resting. So Ellie goes outside of the house and gathers up some snow, melts it for water so she can stay hydrated. Joel can stay hydrated, and the horse that they have can stay hydrated. She gives one more penicillin injection to Joel, and then she sees a flock of crows flying away from the tree, and she goes up to a fence line, and she looks and she sees that it's David and his crew. They have followed her trail, and they are now looking for her. So Ellie gets the bright idea of going back. David and his crew. And of course, David telling these men that are behind James to go look for both Joel and Ellie. So they're on that mission. Ellie gets the bright idea of jumping on the horse after telling Joel that there's some men coming, and she gives Joel a knife, and she says, "I'm going to lead them away from you, but if anybody makes it down here, kill them." So what ends up happening is Ellie gets on the horse. She's right behind them. She points the gun at them and says, "Hey, well, you see it. You see it there. I'm trying to block it just because." But anyways, she says, "Hey, duckers, come and get me." And she leads them away on the horse. But of course, she doesn't realize that James is hot on her trail. James ends up shooting the horse, which knocks Ellie off the horse. And James and the other men surround Ellie as she's lying on the ground. And they, three men tell James, "Do it." And by "do it," they want James to kill Ellie. David fires off his rifle, and the men turn around, and he says, "No, you're not going to kill her. I'm going to take her back to where we're at, and you guys are going to go look for the man who killed Alex." So David takes her back to their camp while the other men go on to look for Joel. And of course, we have our first victim here. He enters the house. He ends up seeing that there's actually a cabinet blocking the door to the basement, because that's one thing that Ellie did before she left, just in case they did end up finding Joel in the house. And he hears the footsteps, and noise from the cabinet moving. This guy gets down to the basement. He looks down and he sees that Joel is no longer lying on the mattress. So as he's looking around, Joel comes up from behind him and stabs him in the neck, and he starts to bleed out. And of course, he ends up dying. Trying to skip to that part because I don't need any BS from YouTube. That's for sure. Meanwhile, we cut back to where David and everyone else is at this resort that they've hunkered down at, and Ellie is now in a cage. She comes to, she sees David, and before she even sees David, she sees a piece of an ear lying on the floor. And she says, "What's going on here?" And David says, "Nothing's going on here." Then, "What's that?" He says, "Desperate times. You know, I got to take care of my people. I got to feed them. They were starving." So you're eating your own people. It's basically what Ellie says. You're disgusting. And David actually comes closer to the cage and says to Ellie that he would like to make a deal with her, that if she joins him, they both will prosper. Neither one of them will perish, and she won't have to worry about Joel. Because David can tell by the look on Ellie's face that she cares about Joel. And as David is close to the cage, that's when Ellie takes the opportunity and she ends up pulling David closer and breaking his finger. And David ends up leaving in a huff. Meanwhile, you have the guys who were left behind. They're hunting for Joel. And then this guy right here ends up going through the fence and he sees the guy that Joel killed lying there on the snow. Then he ends up going into the house where Joel knocks him out. He comes to and he's tied up to the chair. The other guy is tied up to the piano. And you have Joel beating the crap out of this guy while this guy is saying, "Stop it, man, stop it." So Joel says, "Okay, I want to know where we are. Point to where we are." He pulls out the map that he has in his pocket and says, "Point to where we are on this map." And this guy says, "You're not going to find the town that we're in on this map because it's a resort." That's when we find out that it's not an actual town, it's a resort that David and his group are staying at. So Joel tortures this guy some more, wants more information, wants to know that this information is the honest truth. And then after the guy gives up some information, Joel says, "If this information isn't the same information that your buddy gets, I'm going to kill you." Well, because the spoilers are up here, guess what? Joel ends up killing this guy anyway. And then he ends up going to the other guy who says, "You didn't have to do that, man. You really didn't." And Joel says, "I know, but at this point, I don't care." And Joel ends up grabbing a pipe and he crushes the man's skull in. And I need to apologize. I jumped ahead in the scene. And it was actually this scene where David comes in with a tray of food for Ellie. And that's when Ellie questions what's going on because she saw the ear. And yes, cannibalism is going on with this group because people are starving. At least that's the excuse that David gives. And it's also where David ends up having his finger broken by Ellie. Of course, he's in pain and he ends up leaving in the huff. So we cut to another scene after that where both David and James return and while that's happening, Joel has left the house and he's on the lookout for Ellie. And he ends up going to a bait and tackle shop that's locked up, sees a trail of blood on the snow, enters it in, and then he sees a gruesome discovery. I'm not going to actually show it, but it's of human bodies that have been skinned and they're hanging up in this bait and tackle shop to show that David's group has been eating human flesh all this time. So then David and James return. They are on a mission to hack up Ellie. And you see there, David's got the meat cutter. And they're holding Ellie up on this table. And Ellie manages to get away after grabbing the meat cleavers. And she gets James in the neck. She goes on the run. She and David end up having this final showdown in this restaurant where David has one thing in mind, and that's not just to hurt Ellie, but to do some personal harm to Ellie too. And I'm not even going to mention the word because of how YouTube is, but it rhymes with grape. So what ends up happening is Ellie is able to grab the knife and she ends up stabbing David once, stabbing David twice, 3 times, 4 times, 5 times with the meat cleavers. And then she runs out of the building as it's on fire because Ellie took hot iron and she threw it at David and she missed, and that's what set the building on fire. So as she's running out, then Joel comes up behind her and she starts freaking out because she thinks it's one of the people that are of this town, one of David's men, and she says, "Let go of me." Joel turns her around and says, "It's me," and she, is shaking. She's crying. She's scared, and then she and Joel hug, and he says, "It's gonna be okay, baby girl. It's gonna be okay." And of course, at that moment, you would probably think that the character of Joel is also thinking about his own daughter who died in episode 1, and his daughter Sarah was near and dear to him from what you can tell, at least, especially in the game. So that's how the episode ends. And what did I think of this episode? Honestly, I didn't think it was too bad. And the reason why I didn't think it was too bad is because it did have some powerful scenes, especially with that scene where David was trying to grape Ellie. And, the fear that you could see it on Ellie in her face, and also you hear it in her voice. And, that element, that was some pretty good acting there by both Bella Ramsey and the actor who played David. And there were a few other things in this episode which I thought were interesting, but to me, they did deviate from what I've seen from the game itself. And I just don't understand how hard it is for Hollywood to take what's put in a game and easily translate it to live action when there's not really too much to translate, because it's pretty much copy and paste is all you have to do. And real quick, I do want to say hello to the old man. I'm going to say hello to Phil McCracken. Old man says, "Okay, here we go." Phil McCracken says, "I made it to Baron's Pop Talk Let's hear it for BEI. Yeah, okay, right, whatever, Phil. And Phil McCracken says hello to Old Man. Old Man says hello to Phil McCracken. And Phil McCracken says, I guess they put meat back on the menu. You could say that. I mean, it was cannibalism. And Joel a bit kill crazy just because they went alpaca. Yeah. A lot of people did end up liking this episode. I liked it more than I thought I would. But even with that being said, you know, because there were parts of it I did like. I did like the fact that you actually did have strong acting performances by Bella Ramsey and the actor who played David, of course, with how much Pedro Pascal was in it as Joel. You can take that, but you could see what lengths Joel is willing to go to find out information he wants to find out. He's willing to torture and kill people. And in this series, especially the game, that's what people do to survive, especially since this outbreak of this zombie virus, this mushroom virus. And I didn't think it was too bad, but even with that being said, I didn't feel that it was the greatest episode I've seen. If I'm gonna give it a rating, it would probably be a 6.5, maybe a 7, but it's a strong 6.5. I know most of my ratings for this series haven't been all that high, and I'll be perfectly honest, just like I was last week with the Left Behind episode. When you see what happens in the game that the show is based on, and you see, how the story is being told and what's done in the story to make you understand where Joel and Ellie are coming from, to where you care about, what's going on in the world around them. You care about their plight. You care about the fact that Ellie is the only person that they know of so far that is immune to this virus. And they have to get her to this destination in Colorado, and they have to start making a cure out of Ellie's blood. And the fact that in the game, the relationship between Joel and Ellie is developed, and in this series, when I compare it to the game, it's not developed very well. It's actually has parts that are skipped over, where you don't see where the bond comes, where they become a surrogate family, if you want to put it that way. An adoptive family. So, that is one of my major issues with the series, is that it does deviate from the game. I mean, after watching last week's episode and just thinking to myself after watching it and going, something just seems off about this episode. And then I actually saw a stream of the Left Behind episode from the game, which last week's episode was based on. And I'm thinking, they're omitting so much, because I go back, I watch videos, or I see other people doing live streams of the game, and I'm thinking there's no excuse for this. There's no excuse as to why you omit certain things that are, key parts of the story, key parts of character development when it comes to Ellie and Joel. And let's see, I do want to say hello to Kathy Skywalker. Hope you're doing well. So, from what I've seen of what actually happens in the game and what actually happened here, the game did it a lot better again. It just goes to show the game did it a lot better. And some might say, yeah, but Mike, that's because it's the game. Again, with this series, it shouldn't be too hard to copy and paste what happened in the game over to live action. I'm going to repeat what I've said before. I'm going to repeat what I said last week, what I said last night on the Sunday edition of Pop Talk. It's not like you're having these actors, or even the characters for that matter, react to a 10-foot CGI monster. You're not. They're reacting with real human beings. And the story that's being told, when told right and translated right in live action, is one that could be a very gripping story. It's one that can grab you and hold your attention if done right. And in my opinion, it's not being done right because they are not being 100% faithful to the source material. I mean, just a quick way around it. They're not being 100% faithful. I've even heard people say that they're putting in elements of The Last of Us 2 into season 1 of The Last of Us. And now who wants that if nobody's even seen gameplay from The Last of Us 2? Who wants those story elements forced into the story elements of this first season, which is supposed to be based on the first game? Nobody wants to see it. Even someone like me who hasn't played the game, I don't want to see that. I want to see something that's faithful to the source material from the first game. That's what I want to see. So again, my rating for this episode is 6.5 out of 10. Yeah, I almost thought maybe it was a 7, but no, it's a 6.5 out of 10. This series isn't Reigns of Power bad. I wouldn't say that. For those of you who were here as I did my live watch of Reigns of Power, the first 3 episodes, that series did nothing to make me go, I'm going to watch this after 3 episodes. No, the first episode didn't grab me in. And Galadriel, I'm sorry, I didn't care for Galadriel. I didn't care for the way she was being portrayed. I didn't care for the way she was being written. You want to have a strong character, you can develop strong characters by giving the audience a reason to actually care about that character. And also, something that's been mentioned many, many times, have the character go on a hero's journey. That's always been a crucial part of storytelling, the hero's journey, where a character starts. And as they go through their journey, they grow. I mean, it's like any story. You got the hero's journey, just like any story that has its beginning, its middle, and then its end, where the character reaches the mountaintop, the pinnacle of what that character is supposed to be, because they've had to learn and grow. And you don't see that in a lot of live action TV shows. You can see that in some games. You can see it in The Last of Us Part 1. And I'm, again, only speaking from what I've seen from live streams and also watching videos. So I can have a frame of reference of, okay, so this is what actually happened in the game, and this is what they're doing in the TV show. All I want, folks, all I want, like the rest of you, is to be entertained. And I want that hook. I want that hook that says, this is going to be a good show to watch. I got that hook when I watched The Old Man with Jeff Bridges and John Lithgow. I think that was a very good series. I enjoyed all 7 episodes. Yes, there were a couple episodes that I felt, they fell off a little bit, but overall the series was strong, and I'm interested to know what's going to happen in season 2 when that comes out. But as far as watching season 2 of The Last of Us, since we're on episode 8 here for this review, and this live stream, of course, when you watch it, it's not going to be a live stream anymore. It's going to be a replay of the live stream. But we have one episode left, and it's the season 1 finale. So it's going to be interesting to see what they do for the season finale. And I am going to look and see what happens near the end of part 1 of The Last of Us, even though I haven't played it. I really don't care about spoilers at this point. I am going to look and see what happens in the game. This way, when I watch the episode next week, as a matter of fact, I am going to do something that I've done with other television series on this channel when I just did the reviews as PACIFIC414 episode review before integrating it into Pop Talk, is I will be reacting to the episode live. So for next Sunday, there will be 2 episodes of PACIFIC414 Pop Talk Sunday edition. Well, the Sunday edition, of course, at 1 p.m. Eastern. And then starting at 9 p.m. Eastern, I will be giving my live reaction to the season 1 finale of The Last of Us. And then I will be giving a review. I'm trying to see if anybody wants to join me for that. If I can't get anybody, it'll just be me. But that is what I'm going to do. I am going to give my live reaction just like I've done with Chucky, just like I did with the Orville. Granted, with the Orville, I tried to do every one of those episodes as a live reaction if I could. And I'm going to do it with The Last of Us. I'm just going to watch it and you'll hear my genuine reaction. You won't see my genuine reaction because I won't be on camera, but you'll definitely hear it. And just be warned, I may end up cursing depending on what happens in that season finale. I'm trying to keep the cursing down to a bare minimum. And it's just a personal choice. But honestly, if next week's season finale isn't a home run, isn't, a touchdown, isn't one of those that you can say that was a good season finale, you'll hear about it. It'll be uncensored and uncut. But overall, once again, for this episode, it had some strong acting. I'll give Bella Ramsey credit because I wasn't sure about her acting here in episode 1, but she actually did a pretty good job, especially at the end with her acting. But overall, for this episode, it's a 6.5 out of 10. If I do my usual scale of best out of 5, that would probably be a 3.5 out of 5. And that's my final verdict on this episode. If anybody would like to talk about this episode with me, hit me up in Discord, hit me up on Twitter, send a DM. We can talk about it. If you want to come on next Sunday's Pop Talking and talk about it, we can. That'll be the 1 p.m. Eastern edition of Pop Talk. And if you want to join me for the live watch party and reaction to the season finale, we can. I will definitely send you an invitation to join me here on StreamYard. No, I can't stream the episode live, but as long as you have an HBO Max subscription, you'll be able to watch it. But again, that's my final verdict. This episode was a 6.5 out of 10. I do want to thank Old Man for being here, who says, that's shocking. And of course, I want to thank Kathy Skywalker. And she says, I didn't think I would reach that amount, to be honest. And I also want to thank Phil McCracken for being here. Let's see. I just want to make sure I'm not missing anyone else. let's see. But we had Phil McCracken. Mando got a new Grogu. Well, you know what? Considering, how little you see Pedro Pascal in these last few episodes, he might as well be Mando wearing the helmet. And Ellie is his Grogu. And some people have already made that comparison, Phil. The Last of Us. Joel is the Mando and Ellie is Grogu. So take it for what you will. So again, that's my review for this episode of The Last of Us. If you like this review, make sure to leave a thumbs up. If you didn't like the review, go ahead, leave a thumbs down. Share out this video with your friends. Consider subscribing to the channel. I not only do episode reviews, but I talk pop culture and entertainment news, rumors, while giving an opinion with PACIFIC414 Pop Talk. And speaking of PACIFIC414 Pop Talk, this Wednesday on Pop Talk at 6 p.m. Eastern. Phil, I'm going to need you to come into the Discord tomorrow for a watch party. That would be great. Yeah. And remember to file your TPS reports. And tomorrow's watch party will be at 8 p.m. Eastern. That's 8 p.m. Eastern in the PACIFIC414 Discord. Now, it's not an off day or anything, so you're expected to show up on time. All right, if you're not getting the reference that I'm making, tomorrow's watch party prior to Wednesday's Pop Talk, we will be watching Office Space, the 1999 film by Beavis and Butthead creator Mike Judge. So everybody's invited to join the Discord. The link is in the description below. The link should be popping up here and there in the chat. So if you want to watch Office Space, you're more than welcome to. It's going to start at 8 p.m. Eastern in the PACIFIC414 Watch Party voice channel. And then Wednesday at 6 p.m., we will be discussing Office Space. And I'm going to go ahead and say what I think of the movie, at least a little bit. I love the movie. It's a cult classic. It's one of my favorite movies to go back and watch every now and then. That and Stripes, to be honest with you. But again, everybody, I want to thank you for being here. Greatly appreciate it. Old Man, Kathy Skywalker, Phil McCracken. Thank you all. And anybody who might have been lurking or just listening, thank you for doing so. Again, make sure you leave that like, share out the stream, consider subscribing. And as always, I'm not just a baseball guy. I'm an all-around guy. Have a good night, everyone.